February 28, 1985, Louisville, Kentucky. The crowded halls of the Mid-America Trucking Show. Kenworth was about to unveil its new truck. The stage lights came on, the curtain opened, and silence. What stood before them didn't look like a truck. It looked like a joke. The nose was sloped so far downward that it resembled a giant vacuum cleaner, or some strange animal searching for ants on the African savanna. The proud, chrome-covered rectangular front end of classic American trucks was gone. In its place was a soft downward curve, and it sent people in the hall into fits of laughter. One truck driver whispered, "Anteater." That day, the Kenworth T600 received its nickname, the Anteater. Some were even crueler. The vacuum, the Hoover, the aardvark. It became the butt of every joke. When Gary Krudge, sales manager of Kenworth's Toronto dealership, received the first T600 units, only one thought crossed his mind. How are we going to sell this? Drivers mocked it over the CB radio at truck stops. Some openly told their bosses, "If you put me in that thing, I quit." But there was something no one knew. This ugly design was about to change the trucking industry forever. By the end of 1985, the T600 alone accounted for 40% of Kenworth's tractor sales. It was produced for 22 years and sold more than 108,000 units. Like Baldwin Locomotive's Shark Nose locomotive, the T600 was first ridiculed. Then it became a legend. And as you witness the story of this legend, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel to discover the stories of new legends. In the early 1980s, there was an unwritten rule about what a truck was supposed to look like. It had to be boxy. It had to be covered in chrome. And instead of cutting through the wind, it had to push air like a brick. A truck had to look masculine. Kenworth W900, Peterbilt 379, Mack Superliner. These were the kings of the road. Long nose hoods, square bodies, dazzling chrome grills, external air cleaners, shiny exhaust stacks, massive air filters, rivets everywhere. Aerodynamics. That word was for race cars, not for trucks. A former freight executive once said, "Back then, what sold trucks was testosterone. A truck had to look powerful. It had to stand tall. Fuel efficiency. Nobody cared. Fuel was cheap. Business was good." But the world was changing. The 1973 oil crisis had changed how the world viewed fuel. Diesel prices rose from 36 cents per gallon in 1978 to 97 cents in 1981. Now every trucking company was doing the math. It was no longer about how a truck looked. It was about how much fuel it burned. And those box-shaped trucks, they were wallet killers. In 1976, Kenworth engineers launched a project. The goal was simple: design a truck from the ground up with aerodynamics in mind. Like a race car, like a jet aircraft, a machine that sliced through the wind. But there was a problem. To do that, they would have to change the trucking industry from top to bottom. At Kenworth's laboratory in Renton, Washington, a small team built wooden and wax models. They placed them inside the University of Washington's wind tunnel. Every curve, every edge, every surface was tested. Just as Baldwin Locomotive Works had studied airflow when designing the Shark Nose, Kenworth engineers calculated every inch. That sloped nose, it wasn't a stylist's whim. It was mathematics. What people mocked without understanding was engineering genius. A classic truck viewed from the front was a giant rectangle. When wind hit it, air scattered in every direction. It pushed air like a brick, and that meant wasted energy. Wasted energy meant wasted fuel. The T600's nose didn't fight the wind. It controlled it. Air flowed smoothly over the hood, wrapped around the trailer, and exited cleanly from the rear. Wind tunnel results were shocking. The T600 had 50% less aerodynamic drag than the W900. But aerodynamics weren't just about the nose. The T600 had a setback front axle, something Kenworth had never done before. Why? Because it allowed longer front springs, better weight distribution, and a smoother ride. It also reduced the turning radius by 25%. Even the wheel wells were enclosed. Traditional trucks left them open, creating massive drag. On the T600, everything was sealed and smooth. Form followed function. Every design choice had a purpose, not to win beauty contests, but to save fuel. Tests at the Packard Technical Center delivered the final proof. With the same engine and load, the T600 used 22% less fuel than a W900. On paper, the T600 was a victory, but in the real world, people made decisions with emotion, not mathematics, and that would become their greatest mistake. The first person to order the T600 was Glenn Brown, owner of Contract Freighters Inc. He ordered 100 of them, at once. "I saw something innovative and different," he later said. "We were looking for ways to improve efficiency. We believed we could get ahead of the industry." The drivers, they revolted. Drivers who first saw the T600 were embarrassed to park it at truck stops. At truck shows, T600s were pushed into corners like something shameful. Jokes flew over the CB radios. "Hey, watch out, there's an Anteater over here." "Looks like someone left a vacuum cleaner at the Kenworth factory." It wasn't just the looks. Drivers said the T600 made them feel small. In a classic W900 with that long hood, tall cab, massive grille, you were the king of the road. No one challenged you. But the T600, it was humble. The nose sloped downward. The cab was more compact. There was less chrome. It didn't feel like a truck. It felt like a car. One driver said, "I've been doing this for 30 years. When I sit in a W900, I'm king of the highway. But if I drive this thing, people will laugh at me." It was instinctive, emotion, not logic. But when fleet owners sat down at the table, the numbers told a different story. A fleet owner calculated the fuel cost of a truck driving 100,000 miles per year. Diesel was $1 per gallon in 1985. A W900 averaged 5 miles per gallon. That meant 20,000 gallons per year. Total cost, $20,000. A T600, 20% less fuel, 16,000 gallons, $16,000. A difference of $4,000 per truck, per year. If a company operated 100 trucks, $400,000 saved annually. Just as Pennsylvania Railroad executives had ignored the appearance of Baldwin's shark nose once they saw its pulling power, fleet owners stopped caring how the T600 looked and started caring how much money it made. By the end of 1985, the T600 made up 40% of Kenworth's sales. But something even more interesting happened. The very drivers who mocked it slowly began to change their minds. Trucker Gord Cooper from Calgary remembers the first time he saw a T600 in the corner of S&M Kenworth's parking lot. That was the day his passion for Kenworth began. Today, he is one of the most devoted Kenworth enthusiasts in Western Canada. When drivers started driving the T600, they noticed something. It wasn't just fuel efficient, it was better to drive. The setback axle reduced the turning radius by 25%. Maneuvering in tight city streets became easier. Longer front springs smoothed out the ride. Aerodynamics made it more stable in crosswinds. And the cab? Early T600 cabs were described as functional, simple, basic. But in 1990, Kenworth introduced the T600A, aerodynamic mirrors, a one-piece curved windshield, the Aerodyne 2 sleeper with a more aerodynamic roof, more storage, more comfort. There was even an optional digital dashboard developed with Boeing. When the T600B arrived, full side fairings were added. Drag dropped even further. By 2007, the T600 had a drag coefficient 26% lower than the original 1985 model. And drivers stopped laughing. They realized how prejudice had blinded them to opportunity and progress. TMC Transportation's black T600 fleet became an icon of the late 80s and 90s highways. Drivers wanted to work for TMC just to drive those trucks. In 1990, Bob and B.J. Montgomery won the Pride in Polish competition with their 1986 T600A. The truck carried a mural honoring the 7 NASA astronauts who died aboard the Space Shuttle Challenger. Named Something Special, this T600 was no longer a joke. It was art. At IndyCar races in Indianapolis, Bruce Canepa Design's custom T600 hauler stole the show. Canepa took the already striking design and turned it into a true super truck. Anteater was no longer an insult. It was a compliment. In 1995, the U.S. Department of Transportation awarded Kenworth the National Award for Motor Vehicle Research and Development Advancement for the T600's contributions to aerodynamics, energy efficiency, environmental impact reduction, and safety. That same year, Kenworth built its 500,000th custom truck, a 1996 T600 Aerodyne. It was gifted to Wiley Sanders of Alabama. The T600 was not just a truck, it was a revolution. Look at the highways today. Freightliner Cascadia, Volvo VNL, Peterbilt 579, International LT Mack Anthem. Nearly all modern trucks have sloped noses, aerodynamic bodies, roof fairings, enclosed wheel wells, one-piece windshields. All of it is the T600's legacy. Those classic box-shaped trucks. They're now the minority. Models like the Kenworth W900 and Peterbilt 389 are still built, but mostly for special orders, for nostalgia. Over 90% of the industry runs aerodynamic trucks. When the T600 was discontinued in 2007, it was replaced by the T660. In 2013 came the T680, the most aerodynamic truck in Kenworth history. But they all carry the T600's DNA, that sloped nose, that setback axle, that philosophy form follows function. Contract Freighters' first order of 100 T600s created a domino effect. Other companies saw the numbers, saw the fuel savings, and began ordering. In 1986, the T600 made up 40% of Kenworth's sales. In a single year, a failure had become the company's most popular model. The story of the T600 is the anatomy of industrial change. People fear change, especially aesthetic change. There was a fixed idea of what a truck was supposed to look like: boxy, chrome-covered, flashy. The T600 shattered that image, and people got angry. But the mathematics were clear. 20% fuel savings. Brute force versus efficiency. Classic trucks were powerful. The T600 was smart. Like Baldwin's Sharknose, the T600 was a radical departure, a complete break from tradition. And like every radical change, it was met with resistance. But numbers won. Mathematics won. Reality won. Today, if you ask a young driver at a truck stop, "What is the Anteater?" he probably won't know. But if you show him a photo of a T600, he'll say, "Oh, an old Kenworth." It looks normal to him, because now, all trucks look like this. The T600 changed the industry's DNA. It went from freak to icon. More than 108,000 units sold, produced for 22 years. It trained generations of drivers. Today, T600s are becoming rare. Most have been retired, scrapped, or relegated to regional service. Large fleets have replaced them with T680s and Cascadias. But in 2024, at the Kenworth Truck Show in Chillicothe, Ohio, a man saw something. At the Ross County Fairgrounds, among rows of W900s and K100s, stood a shining white 1995 Kenworth T600B, immaculate, pulling a white 2024 Timte hopper trailer. He called it a unicorn. A mythical creature, an impossible sight, because today the T600 is no longer just a truck. It is a legend. Because of it, trucks consume less fuel, operate more efficiently, and pollute less. Because of it, companies save millions. Because of it, highways are quieter and cleaner. The Anteater began as a joke. It entered history as a revolution. The day Kenworth engineers placed those wooden models into the wind tunnel, they were building the future. They just didn't know it yet. Just like Baldwin's Sharknose, just like Ford's Big Red. Sometimes the greatest revolutions hide behind the most ridiculed ideas, and the T600 is proof of that.